Two police officers are dead. A third is in hospital. Families are grieving. Communities are shaken. This is not how anybody in that community imagined their week would unfold. And before I say anything else, before I talk about the politics and before I talk about the media spin, before I talk about the laws and the registers and the way that this story has been hijacked, I need to make something very, very clear. I want to be very honest with you as well. I don't really respect the police as an institution. Too often we've seen them used as an enforcement arm of the bad policies. Too often they've been the ones carrying out laws that targeted the very people who are doing nothing wrong. But here is what I actually do respect. I respect the men and women who still choose to put on a uniform every morning and every night, knowing full well that they might be walking into danger. I respect the fact that when they head out the door, they don't know what's waiting for them. And sometimes, as we have seen this week, they don't make it home. These men, Detective Leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson, 59 years old, and Senior Constable Vadim DeWart, just 35 years old. They were husbands, fathers, colleagues, mates. And now their names are in a roll call of those who never made it home. When I speak in this video, nothing I say is about diminishing them. Nothing is about disrespect. It's about telling the truth. Because you and I both know, in Australia in 2025, every time something like this happens, the truth doesn't stay the truth for long. It gets bent. It gets reshaped. It gets turned into ammunition for another agenda. And who ends up paying the price? Not the extremists who ignored the law, not the politicians who failed, not the bureaucrats who looked the other way. The ones who pay the price every time are the law-abiding shooters, hunters, farmers, competitors, collectors, the men and women who are doing it right, the people who keep the law, the ones who follow the rules. That's who gets hit. And this time, make no mistake, it's already happening. On the morning of Tuesday, the 26th of August 2025, Victoria Police assembled a team of 10 officers. The destination was a rural property outside of Porepunkah, a small town in northeastern Victoria, tucked into the foothills of Mount Buffalo, about 3 hours from Melbourne. Their mission, well, is to execute a search warrant. And this wasn't just a random visit. This wasn't a knock on the door and have a chat. This was a planned operation. The men, they were there for 56-year-old Desi Bird Freeman. Some outlets have also referred to him as Desmond Philby. Wasn't just another bloke in the bush. There are two reasons why police were there that morning. Fram was subject to a firearms prohibition order. That means that the system has already said that he could not own or use a firearm. He already has been stripped of that. He is also facing allegations of historical sex offences. So on paper, this was a dangerous man. That's why 10 officers went together. That's why they moved in the way that they did. Around 10:30 a.m., they arrived at the property. Reports say they moved towards a bus parked on the land. And that's when it happened. Freeman was inside. He was armed. He was ready. According to the Australian, he fired at police with homemade shotguns. This is a very important fact. It was a homemade shotgun. Other reports say they have floated around the possibility of a rifle and even the possibility that he had seized police firearms during the firefight. None of that has actually been officially confirmed. What we do know is that he was heavily armed and he was ready for the police. 3 officers were struck. Detective Leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson tragically lost his life. Senior Constable Vadim DeWart, again, tragically lost his life. And a third officer shot in the lower body, and he was airlifted out to emergency, and he is now stable. And then, well, Freeman ran into the bush. He didn't run into town. He didn't take a car down the highway. He ran into the bush. But this wasn't just any bushland. This is alpine country. And if you've been to Mount Buffalo, you'll know what I mean. Sheer cliffs, deep gullies, cold winds, snow on the ground, dense bush, caves and old mine shafts scattered across the ranges. It's the kind of terrain where a single man who knows the area can vanish. And the response from the police was absolutely massive. The AFP Tactical Response Group joined the hunt. Helicopters circled overhead. Drones with thermal imaging were launched. Roadblocks went up and a no-fly zone declared over the area. Mount Buffalo National Park was closed, local schools were locked down, and residents were told, stay inside. Police have said that this may be a protracted operation. This is not going to happen for days, maybe not even weeks, but however long it takes, the community has been rattled to its core. Emergency services have gathered to honour the fallen. Buildings in Melbourne were lit in blue in tribute. And as I record this, Freeman is still at large. That's the story. That's what happened. And if we lived in a country where facts stayed the facts, that's all we need to say. But we don't. And so we move on to the next level. And honestly, this is where it actually really does get twisted. Before the funerals, before the manhunt is even over, politicians have already found their story. National Senator Bridget McKenzie, a Labor MP, Dan Rapkoli, probably mispronounced that, but whatever, front of the media this very next day. Their solution? Fast-track the National Firearms Register. Rapkoli told today's news, we need to make sure that we know where our firearms are in this country. McKenzie chimed in, for 20 years we've had a national agreement and still no national register. This has to be done. So there it is. 2 officers shot dead, 1 in a hospital, and a community in shock. And the answer is they jumped to, well, it's more bureaucracy. For shooters weren't even involved. Just let's pause for a minute. Freeman had already had his license stripped. He was already under firearms prohibition order. He was already banned. And he still had guns. He had a homemade shotgun. As I said, this is, you can see what's happening here. So what exactly would a national firearms register have changed? Another line in the database, another file stamped prohibited. He was already prohibited. The idea that a register would have stopped him is absurd. It's a distraction. It's theatre. It's the same old story. Politicians reach for easy headlines while ignoring the obvious. The system has already failed. So let's just cut through it right now. Freeman, he's not one of us. I don't believe he's a farmer culling roos. He's not a father teaching his kids how to safely handle his firearms at the range. And I believe that he is not a competitor at a local rifle club. I believe he's an extremist. He's a type of person they call a sovereign citizen, a man who thought that the law doesn't apply to him. And here's the key point. He was already banned from owning firearms, which is why experts are speaking out. Dr. Samantha McFerden, violence professional specialist at Griffin University, told 9 News, we're actually talking about somebody who didn't have a gun license, had a firearms prohibition order against them, and had 10 police attending their property to serve a warrant. Clearly, it's not the kind of measure that can prevent these types of incidences. Her point is simple. A national register wouldn't have stopped Freeman. Instead, she argues we should be addressing the underlying drivers of violence, unemployment, mental health, societal disconnection. These are real work. That's what might prevent the next tragedy. But that's not what politicians want. They want a quick fix. They want the shiny little headlines. They want the easy soundbite that makes the public feel safe while actually doing fuck all, absolutely fuck all for the public to feel safe. And so they reach for more laws. And once again, shooters pay the price. This isn't just a once-off. It is a pattern. 1996, Port Arthur. Sweeping bears, national agreement and buybacks. 2022, Wamballa. The ambush happened. Reviewed calls for a national firearms register. Porepunkah. This year. The same play again. Each time the tragedy is real. The victims are real. But the solution is the same. More laws on people who weren't involved. So let's just look at the numbers. Australia today has more than 4 million registered firearms. More than before Port Arthur. And yet again, firearm-related deaths have fallen from around 500 in 1996 to just over 200 today. The rate has dropped from 2.9 per 100,000 people to just 0.06. More guns, fewer deaths. Doesn't fit the narrative, does it? And internationally, the evidence is just as clear. Registering every single shotgun and rifle does not prevent misuse. Canada tried it. New Zealand tried it. Both admitted it failed and scrapped parts of their systems. So why push it here? Because it's not about safety. It's about control. It's about politics. It's about being seen to do something. But as I said before, they're doing fuck all. Even if that something punishes the innocent while ignoring the guilty. As Dr. McPherson said, instead of saying, let's have more gun laws, let's look at the circumstances. Let's find real in-depth solutions. Quick fixes make people feel safe in the short term, but they don't work in the long term. And she's right. 100% she's right. So what does this mean for you? It means more red tape, more suspicion, more hoops to jump through. You're already in a state of registry. You already passed background checks. You've already had your safes inspected. And yet, because of an extremist who ignored the law, you're one that they actually want to punish. Imagine being a farmer with a 223 in a safe. Imagine being a competitor at a rifle range. Imagine being a collector with your grandfather's shotgun locked away. You've done everything right, and yet the politicians want to treat you like the next Freeman. That's not safety. That is scapegoating. Now, once shooters are lumped in with extremists, there is no limit how far the government can go. So here is honestly where I stand with the situation. We can honour Detective Leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson and Senior Constable Vadam Duwart. We can respect their sacrifice and support their families. And at the same time, we can defend the truth. A National Firearms Register would not have stopped Freeman. He is already banned, already flagged, and already on the system. The problem isn't shooters. The problem isn't hunters, farmers, or competitors. The problem is with extremists, criminals who ignore the law, and a government who refuses to face the deeper causes of violence. So don't buy into this media spin that's happening right now. Don't stay silent as well. Don't let them turn this tragedy into another excuse for control. And again, I know I speak about firearms, but they're moving towards more and more control over every single aspect of our lives. You really need to pay attention to that. Subscribe, share, and speak up. Because if we don't, the narrative continues to harden. And once it does, it becomes law. This fight is more about firearms. It's about your freedoms of everyday life. And it's about whether a tragedy will always be weaponized against ordinary Australians. It's about whether law abiding will finally say enough. See you on the next video.